morning. I would like to welcome all of you to Seasons of the Soul. Hopefully this is where you meant to be. If not, you need to quickly find your other session. Jackie and Jen are handing out handouts specifically for this session that talks about the 4 seasons we are going to talk about, and just gives you a question not to be answered out loud, but to take home and do a little self-reflection on. We're going to talk about what the different seasons are. That's also on the handout in case I forget something. But I want you guys to kind of think about what season am I in right now? And then our panelists, none of which are up here. Where do you all go? Oh, there they are. Oh, that's right. You're handing out. I've lost them all. We're off to a great start. Yeah, I know. Good luck. They're each going to share a little bit about a season. Good to go. Yes. All right. So we all go through and are currently in a spiritual or emotional season. And it's going to look different for everyone. But knowing what season you're in is going to help you navigate that season. It's going to help you really know what tools you need to make it through that season. Because it's very easy to say, well, God is going to get you through, and He will. But we need things. So the first season is summer, which is a season of abundance. And interestingly, it can actually be the easiest season to miss, because sometimes we don't always realize when things are going great. We don't always realize, like, oh my gosh, things are just awesome right now. But summer is joy. Summer is fruitfulness. It's purpose and gratitude. And it's a time of flourishing, and really a time of seasonal or a spiritual rest, which I think sometimes we don't always realize, like, oh, right now things are okay. So summer is just, it's a season of gratitude, but it can also, it can be a little hard to recognize, believe it or not. Then we have fall. Fall is a season of transition. Fall sometimes can be really difficult because it means letting go of things, and that is really hard for us to do. Fall represents endings of things. Maybe it's a ending of a relationship. It's an ending of a opportunity. It's an ending of something that we didn't expect. And so fall, though, just, it really prepares us. It's a changing. God uses this transition to let us know, hey, something is coming. And in fall, even though change can be unsettling, just like the leaves falling off the tree, they land on the ground and they mulch into the ground to enrich it. So fall is going to grow you, even though it's going to stretch you because it's a season of change and it's not always easy. That then leads to winter. And also just know, we are going through the seasons calendarly, but you may go from a season of winter to a season of summer. You don't necessarily go from, oh, this is change, immediately into loss. And that's what winter is, a season of loss. It symbolizes grief, symbolizes sadness, processing something that has been lost. Maybe you have lost a dream. Right? It's not always a tangible thing like a job or a relationship, but winter is not meant to be endured alone. Scripture calls us, Galatians 6 says, we weep together, we care for one another, we carry each other's burdens, and that's what we need to do in winter. Winter can also extend a little longer for some than others, but it always kind of gives way to spring, which is a season of new beginnings. And spring is renewal, it's fresh starts, it's spiritual growth. Green in spring means things are growing and things are changing and hopefully getting better, unless you don't like flowers, and that makes me so sad for you. But also spring can actually be a little scary, because sometimes embracing the new or embracing the growth can be really scary. it really requires courage and a willingness to believe that God has something amazing planned for you in this new thing. And you really have to you just have to trust his leading in springtime. And so as the panel shares here, we're going to talk about things. God gives us compasses. He gives us a compass in the Bible, but he also gives us the tool of community. And some of these seasons, you really need community more than in other seasons. And so if you are in a summer season, you might actually be that community for someone who's in a fall season or someone who's in a winter season. So that's something to think about as we go through this. And then you also, one of God's best tools is the ability to pack light. Which is hysterical. I actually tend to underpack on vacations, but my husband compensates and overpacks. So we always end up with enough stuff. But packing light just means forgiving in the different seasons and not carrying that with you. So we are going to start with summer, and each of the panelists is sharing in summer. And remember, summer's spiritual joy, gratitude, but again, summer can be a little easy to miss because things are easy. So panelists, what does abundance look like in your life right now? Or what practices help you pay attention so you don't miss the summer moments?
Hi, I'm going to introduce myself really quick. My name's Jen. I'm actually not from this area. I live in Florida, and my claim to fame at Westside is that Yaya or Caroline is my mom. So... but I'm really excited to be here to just be a part of this conference and serve this community who has also served me and my family. My kids love Westside. So, yeah, it feels really great to be here. I'm also a veteran. My husband was in the Army, so I've been a military spouse as well. And I'm currently a therapist, so I work in mental health. And then kind of like I said, I have two little boys. So that kind of leads me into my summer. It's interesting because I feel like with these seasons in different areas of your life, you can be in a different season. And I really feel with my kids right now, I'm in a summer. They're 6 and 7. Yes, 6, 7. My 7-year-old's about to turn 8. I can't wait. We have 2 weeks, and the joke can no longer be made. But they are becoming more independent. They're having their own personalities. They're in such a fun age, and I feel like we've made it out of survival toddler mode. Everyone sleeps in their own bed. Everyone can go to the bathroom on their own. We kind of made it through that. And we're not yet into a transition, the season of, they still want to play with me. They still want us to be involved. We're not thinking about leaving the house yet, that type of things. And I find it is a season that is so sweet, but I can take it for granted because I'm like, I can take a breath. Like I can sit on the couch and my kids can play in the other room and I don't have to be worried they're going to put something in their mouth or, all those little things. But I'll have moments where I'm like, I really don't want to play Uno again, But remembering that being mindful in those small moments is what summer is. And for me, thinking about this is thinking about like practicing spiritual mindfulness and what that means. And I'm really trying to be present in the moment so that I can remember that God is in those moments. He's in Uno or whatever it is that doesn't seem that important, but that's really where that rest and that renewal and that just growing that connection to him. And it also kind of draws me to the verse, Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart. And in a summer, it feels like, I don't need to guard it. I can kind of let it rest. But it's those moments and those moments of renewal are what are forming that and continuing to guard you. So when you move into another season, you're kind of prepared.
Hi, I'm Tricia, and I'm also a military spouse. If you looked over my bio, my husband was in the military for 27 and a half years. Worked for the VA for a number of years, and my primary, the thing that I did with military is taught soldiers the BSEP programs, the things of that nature. I'm a teacher at heart, and love the military family. So that was kind of my contribution to that lifestyle. Of course, now that has changed. We've been retired now for 10 years, hard to believe. And I looked at the season of summer as definitely a season of abundance. And that abundance has come to fruition more since we've retired, because we've had more time to grow spiritually. We've had more time to study Scripture, had more time to pray, have more time to be in life groups, to be in community, to serve. So this has really been a time for us and a time for me where we have experienced a lot of spiritual growth. I know a number of you in here know a dear friend of mine named Shirley Payton. I call her my pushy friend because without her, I would not be where I am spiritually today. She pushed me into ministry, literally. And that's why I call her my pushy friend. But I'm so grateful for that. Without her, I would not be a prayer partner today because, to be honest with you, I don't like to pray in public. But I stepped out of that comfort zone to pray with people, and now it's become a big blessing in my life to pray with people. The other pushy thing she did shortly after we retired was to convince both my husband and me to become a Stephen minister, which we did graduate from that program in 2017. And my first caregiver was in the spring of 2017. What a blessing for me, here again, stepping out of my comfort zone, because I had the opportunity to minister to a young mother whose son had just been diagnosed with leukemia. I met her at the hospital after he'd been there for about a week or so. And I watched him. I spent 2 years walking alongside of her. That's what a Stephen minister does, in case you don't know, is that when you have an issue, and you need someone to walk beside you through an issue, that's what the Stephen minister does. Fortunately, that young man, he is now about 14 years old. He's in remission, but I was with her during hospitalization and treatment. He needed a bone marrow transplant, and are you ready for this? His younger brother was an exact match. So that was God. That was truly God. Through the bone marrow transplant, through his recovery, and through his remission. And believe it or not, we are still close to this very day, and that was, 2017 we began our relationship. And we will always have a special bond because of what we shared together during those 2 years. Another thing that we have been involved with that has helped us grow spiritually are life groups. And if you're not in a life group, I would really, really encourage you to do so. We've been in one life group, a couples life group, since 2009. And guess who invited us to that life group? Shirley, of course. And I don't even remember now, 6 or 7 years ago, Shirley, invited me to be a co-leader in her women's Bible study. And what a blessing that has been. So I look at this season, the summer season, as really a time that both my husband and I have grown spiritually. And we are so, so grateful for what the Lord is doing in our lives and pray that we can continue to reach out and serve.
Good morning. I'm Jackie, and I'm going to give you a really good overview of my summer. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget anything. So here we go. My husband Corey and I have been married for 26, almost 27 years. We have a son at Leavenworth High School. He's in 10th grade. I have a daughter that's at the University of Nebraska who graduates in May. My husband retired from a wonderful career in the Army back in 2018. My family says I am the worst part-time, full-time worker because it seems like my job is a full-time job all the time. I'm blessed to be in a dental practice where the owner trusts the Lord in all things and isn't afraid to profess it. Nothing in our life is on fire, and that is a blessing in itself. We're just living life. I'm receiving this season with gratitude. Ecclesiastes 3:1-2 says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest." And I'm in that harvest time. First, the training time. I'm thanking God daily for my family and kids. They're adulting really well. We fully realize God is in control. Our kids are thriving. They're making great decisions. They're excelling. They're surrounded by friends that are like-minded. This is all the Lord's success. He is our wisdom as well as our judge. James 1-17 says, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, and it comes down from the Father with whom there is no variation or shadowing of turning." Healthy relationships don't happen by accident. They're often the fruit of prayer and examples of the parents. We set the boundaries, and through God's grace, He often uses our community to protect, to refine, and shape our kids. It's amazing how the Lord puts the most perfect people in our lives at the most perfect time. Our youth program here at church, years ago when we first started, that was a key success for our daughter. We are truly thankful for this community and those who invest in our kids. Investing is so important. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffer harm." I tell you, my kids are who they hang out with. I'm in a season of praying for not only them, but for their friends, the people they spend their time with. I'm seeing a shift in my life from a manager to a witness. Training seasons are hard. They're loud. They're hands-on. Harvest times are quieter. It's less about correcting them and more about watching and being present. Seeing who my kids are when no one else is looking. I like to do that. Trusting in the work that's already been done with them and on the Lord's ongoing shaping and molding on them, all the while reminding myself that my love for them is nothing compared to God's love for them. I'm practicing joyful presence while being with them and finding time to laugh, ask questions about their day, finding time to listen to them. And of course, right now with my 16-year-old, it's skiing and it's snowboarding because I do whatever it is that I can do to spend time with him. Because the difference between my girl and my boy, I can barely get 2 words out of him. But I know that that's him, and he's uniquely his own, and he loves me, and I know that. But there definitely is a difference between my girl and my boy. I would say I also notice with older kids that it's more about now me blessing them than really instructing them, which that's wonderful, girls. To bless them feels so heavenly. And for those of you that are deep in the instruction season, there is a time of blessing coming. For me personally, I'm noticing this season is full of the gift of time. That is, unless you work in dental, then you're the worst part-time, full-time worker ever. And I do. I'm focusing on deepening my own spiritual life, making sure that I'm daily in the Word, and that I'm being more bold in my walk. I'm strengthening my marriage because, in training times, all the focus goes on those kids, and sometimes that man of yours just is off on the side. And right now, in this season of my summer, we are spending as much quality time together, and I'm just reminded at how amazing the Lord, the man that the Lord gave me is. Because like I said, during that training time, soon a season time will be here. Another season time will be here as we're getting ready to launch another bird out of our nest. We are not going to be empty nesters. We will be bird launchers.
Thanks, ladies. 3 different examples of summer, 3 different examples of a time of abundance. So ask yourself right now, am I in the summer season? Am I in a season of abundance? And if you are, as we heard, then you actually have a responsibility. We do not sit back and coast in summer. We reach out to people that are in the trenches of fall and winter. Speaking of fall, Jackie.
Yeah, that's me.
Fall
All right, again,
is...
I'm sorry, I wrote it down again.
We're going to work our way backwards now. That's so hysterical that you guys sat in order, which was not planned, but you're
All right,
amazing.
so I am in fall. I'm in a meaningful season full of pride and trust and hope. Our daughter Lauren is a senior at the University of Nebraska, like I said. She graduates in May, and she's going to be commissioning into the Army as a logistics officer. What? Yeah, amen. The Lord has, okay, let me start. And the Lord has also led a young man into her life this last year as well. She's fully stepped into adulthood. And to top it off, she wants Alaska as her first duty station, which Fort Leavenworth was on the list. I'm like, girl, Alaska? Oh. So my season is a constant prayer. It really is. Like, I'm spending my whole day praying. My girl isn't so little anymore. My thrifting sidekick, I love thrifting girls. My thrifting sidekick isn't thrifting with me anymore. And Alaska, seriously, it's Alaska. That's a long ways away. Oh. And actually, I'm kind of afraid that if my husband gets to Alaska, we're doomed. We won't come back. Like, that was kind of my thought process on that too. But it's amazing how the Lord teaches you and brings you through times that ultimately prepare you for something greater on in life. I've done deployments with great distance. I've watched my love do hard, dangerous things. I fully surrendered my husband to the Lord, and I have to do the same with Lauren. I'm not going to be there when she needs me, per se, right beside me. Like, the only thing I can do is give her back to the Lord, and that's exactly what I've done. I'm thankful for the woman she's become. She's strong, she's thoughtful, she's courageous, she's smart, she's funny. I'm constantly praying for her discernment with every decision, with the strength where her path is hard, strength for when her path is hard, and peace for when she's far from home. I pray she always feels the Lord's deep, overwhelming, never-ending love for her. I pray the Lord calls her to serve something greater than herself and to give her integrity, humility, and courage. I pray she lets her light shine bright and that she knows she always has the love of Jesus inside of her. And he cares far more for her than anyone else does in her life. We constantly pray for the man the Lord has made for her. I pray that the Lord guards her heart while strengthening her and surrounding her with people who encourage her walk and challenge her to grow. I have faith and I have peace to know that the Lord will go before her and we will stand right behind her, whatever she decides to do. Joshua 1:9, and these are verses that I pray all the time. Joshua 1:9 says, "Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, for the Lord your God goes with you." Psalm 91:11 says, "He will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all ways." Proverbs 3:5-6 is my life verse. "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, lean not on your own understandings, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path." James 1:5 says, "If you lack wisdom, you should ask God, who generously gives to all, without finding fault." Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, to prosper and not harm you, plans to give you hope in a future." Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human matters. And I find that a lot in my job too. I'm in the dental field, and most people don't like to go to the dentist, which blows my mind. And they're not happy most of the times, and nerves and anxiety. We are, so I find that verse really helps for me. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, "Two are better than one. If either of them fails or falls down, the other one can help him up." I pray my daughter will walk boldly into the Lord's calling, that she's guarded by his hand, guided by his truth, and strengthened by his peace. So my life of transition is really my kids' transition is what I'm really feeling, but I'm thankful for it. I see me going into a time of spring from this, because ultimately the Lord knows what their path is. The Lord has their life in his hands, and he wants what's good for them.
Amen to that. He wants what's good for all of us. So ask yourself, has there been something in my life that God forced me to release? Because let's just call it what it is. Sometimes as women, we have a bit of a control issue, and God's like, I'm really going to need to just rip that right out of your closed fist. Big or small. These aren't even big and small things, but how did God meet you in that time of change? We're not raising hands. Reflect on that. If you feel like you're in a season of fall and transition. The next season we're going to talk about is winter, which, again, it can feel isolating, whether it's grief or disappointment or a role change. So, Trish, what helped you endure a winter season, and how did community or faith keep you from navigating it alone?
Am I to answer that now, or do you want me to tell my story?
Right now. We're very excited to hear.
Well, God has always been with me. I have been a follower of Jesus since I was 16 years old, and I'm old now. So that's one of the reasons I'm going to also be reading my story, is because I can no longer memorize. You know, that happens, believe it or not. The community that surrounded me during the particular time of loss that I'm going to be talking about was primarily my family, and then my church family, and also my theater family. That's why I no longer do theater without being able to see the words or speak the words to sing, because I like to sing. But anyway, I digress. So basically that's it. You know, really keep your eyes on Jesus, number one. And number two, surround yourself with your family, whether it be your immediate family, your church family, or it could be your work family in your case. In my case, I'm retired. So I have just wonderful ladies that I see in this room that I can laugh with and cry with and pray with. So they're always encouraging to me. And my story, here again, I'm going to be discussing a time of loss. And it's not a recent time, because I'm kind of in that season as well with a health issue. But the particular season, as I prayed about what the Lord wanted me to talk about, and it was a difficult choice, but one day I woke up and just crying. And I am a crier, by the way, so I'm hoping I can get through this without crying. But I woke up and the Lord just had me crying. And he said, I want you to talk about the time you lost your mother. See, I'm already starting. And believe it or not, that was 20 years ago. So, you know, it's not a thing I'm going through at this time. But as you quoted also in Ecclesiastes 3:1, it states that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. When I read this verse, it says to me that God is not only the master of time, but also he has planned the different seasons of our lives, to include the ones that we are discussing today, and even the season of loss, because that is something that he has planned and he has created. God also tells us through his word in Ecclesiastes that, you know, it's okay to mourn a loss. And as Cassie said, there are different types of loss. Relationships, divorce, kids going off to college, being an empty nester. There's so many different ways. Abandonment, loss of relationships. The particular loss that I am going to share with you today is, like I said, the loss of my mother. And so I will let you know that if you want to cry, cry. If you're hurting, hurt. If you're sad, it's okay. God tells us all these things are okay. And they're actually good for us to be able to process those, a loss in that way. In my, well, as I said, I'm not a young chick anymore. So I've experienced a number of winter seasons in my life. But the loss of my mother 20 years ago still grieves my soul. Yet while going through this season with my mother, God reminded me of a very special way that this is just our temporary home, that we're bound and our destination is really heaven. So, a little bit of background. In March of 2003, just a few days after my mother turned 90 years old, and we celebrated her birthday with family and friends, we packed up her things and moved her from Alabama to Kansas. She could no longer live alone because of failing health and onset dementia. We knew right away when she got lost, couldn't find her way home, coming back from a medical appointment, that, okay, it's time you need some help. My sister said, I've helped Mother, because she lived in Florida, about 45 minutes from my mother. She said, I've had her for 50 years. You get her now. Which, that was okay. I was okay with that. Being a military spouse, I didn't live close to my mother. And as most of us know that are military spouses, when you take a family vacation, if you're in the military, where do you go? You go home. Exactly. So that's when we got to see her, maybe once a year. That's that. My family, though, was up for the challenge. I have a wonderful husband and daughter who was living with us at that time. And so we were all up for caring for my mother. But I will tell you, caring for an elderly parent is not easy. We've had one that was sweet as pie. That was mine. My husband's was mean. But we loved her anyway. So we've had two parents live with us, both mothers. When my mother moved in, though, we did learn a few techniques on how to care for an elderly person and how we should deal with onset dementia and that type of thing. But we actually enjoyed having her, and it was a blessing. I look back on that time and I just count it as a blessing, because I got to spend 2.5 years every day seeing my mom. And that means a lot. After a while, and things started settling into a routine for our family, Julie, Jim, and I all worked, but we were able to find a wonderful lady, Marge Brown, if any of you ever heard of her. She's since passed away. But she came to take care of Mother during the day and just give her some companionship so she wouldn't be alone. And that was just a true blessing. And then, of course, we got used to every 3 to 4 months, Mother went into the hospital and was in there for several weeks due to congestive heart failure. So one day, however, though, that routine changed. And would you believe it was my daughter's wedding day? Mother woke up on September the 3rd. It was a Saturday morning. And she said, I'm not feeling well. I am not going to this wedding. And we pushed and we prodded and we pleaded. And we said, Mother, you've got to go. She did. But looking back over pictures from that day, she could hardly muster a smile. It was you could just tell that she didn't feel good. So, as it turned out, she made it through the wedding and the reception on Sunday, the very next day. Our son was hugging her goodbye. He was getting ready to go home, and she collapsed in his arms and was then rushed to the hospital, where it turned out that it was another bout of congestive heart failure. But this time it was different. She was in the hospital for several weeks, and she was in the hospital for several weeks, and bless her heart, they have, and for you nurses and caregivers and health experts, you know that I guess with congestive heart failure, your heart's not pumping correctly, so it puts fluid back into your lungs. So bottom line, her lungs kept filling up. They kept doing the aspirations day by day until finally they said, she just can't tolerate this anymore. So basically, we cannot do anything more. Take her home, let her live out the rest of her days. So one of the hardest things I had to do was to go into my mother and tell her that, sorry, Mom, there's nothing else that we can do. You're going home to basically die. And she took that really well, but she was a very strong woman and not a crier. I took after my dad, who was a crier. So what did I do? Cried the whole time I was talking to her. And but then I always knew that the Lord was there and he had it in his hands. So, and he showed me during that time frame that his grace was sufficient. And he didn't let me down at all. Mother was discharged from the hospital, and we brought her home under hospice care. In addition to her daycare giver, who we had for 2.5 years, I hired overnight help to come, and from about 11 to 8 o'clock in the morning, and then when I got home from work, I had the 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock shift to take care of her and watch her. But even with that, even with having someone there around the clock, she would cry out at night for me, because that's who she wanted, was me. So, long story short, or short story long, whichever case you want to look at it, she would cry out because her lungs were filling up with fluid. She couldn't breathe. So she would cry out for me to come, and she'd say, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And of course, what do you want to do when you can't breathe? You want to stand up. Well, she was like, I couldn't hold her. It was just, but I tried, and I tried to calm her down. But as the hospice nurse told me, bottom line, when she was experiencing these things, her lungs were filling up with fluid. She was basically drowning in her fluid. After several weeks, she went into a coma. And that was the next step we had. But as she drew closer to this time, which I didn't learn, was a word called transition. I never thought about that word. My sister passed away a few years ago, and that was the term they used for her, was she was transitioning. So as my mother was transitioning, I want to be up to date with stuff, from her earthly home to her eternal home. She did lapse into that coma, and fortunately, my mother had always grown up in the church. She always took me to church, but I didn't know where she stood with the Lord. So several weeks or several months before this had happened, we talked about her, where she felt that she would go for her eternal life. And she wasn't sure, like most people. She said, I went to church. I'm a good person. Well, good persons, good people is not what gets you into the arms of Jesus. It's his gift. But anyways, we had prayed, so I knew that she had received Jesus as her Savior and Lord. And so that grief could turn into, my grief could turn into peace at that time. November the 5th, 2005, I'm almost done, I promise, started a day of watching and waiting because Mother's body had started shutting down. Our worship pastor, we were attending Wallula Christian Church at that time, and we had become close personal friends with him. He stopped by the house to pray for her, and shortly after he left, my husband and I went down to check on her, and she was in a bedroom in our basement, and we found her taking her last breath. That's how quickly, and we just made it in there when she was in her last moments of her life. But and the reason I wanted to share this story with you is because the gift that God showed me the day that she died. Yeah, thanks. As she was taking her last breath. And she'd been in a coma, mind you, so she had moved in days. But her arms went up just like this. Her arms went up just like this. So I know Jesus was there. I know his presence was there. And I know that at that moment she went into his arms because she lifted her arms and they immediately fell down. So God gave me such a blessing that day because I had felt like over the weeks, speaking of loss, I was losing a part of my mother every day. But he brought me a gift of joy that I will never, ever forget. Never, ever forget. So, ladies, I'm still praising God for that moment, that he showed me where my mother was going to be. He showed me that there was life after death. So have no fear. There is life after death. And my mother chose to enter that life. And if you haven't made that decision, I encourage you to do so today. Please don't wait another moment to ask the Lord to come into your life, to be your Lord and your Savior, so that you can be with him in his heavenly home for your entire life.
Amen. Thank you, Trish. We did not practice any of this, so that's the first time hearing that story. So the reason we set the seasons up a little like they were, not that is not a beautiful way to end the panel, but spring, our last season is new beginnings. And spring is, like we talked about earlier, it's a time of renewal and it's a time of new things, but spring can actually be really challenging. It can be challenging to have God invite you into something new. It can be really scary. And so, Jen, we're going to end our panel with you. Can you share a time when God was inviting? We really want to make sure we can hear Jen in these mics. Can you share a time when God was inviting you into something new and what helped you say yes instead of staying in the comfort of the familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Trish and Jackie, for sharing that. When I think of spring, I think of flowers and like baby bunnies and baby animals being born. But I think sometimes I forget like the process of birth. We don't just like wake up and then the baby's born. There's a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort that's necessary to allow this like new change, this new life to happen. And so when I'm thinking of spring for me, I had really difficult situation at work where I knew I needed to leave a place I was at and go to something new. And there's a lot of, it wasn't just, oh, I'm going to quit and go somewhere else. It was, how is this going to impact people that rely on me, people that I work with, you know, the relationships I have. But I just kept coming back to really hearing God saying, like, this is what's next for you. This is kind of what is next in this season, and kind of almost pushing me into spring. And something that I was really falling back on is Romans 8:28. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. And I think, you know, to get to the spring, you have to take the risk and you have to like believe in the faith of what you're being called into, and believe that even when it doesn't feel good, God is working good. So even when people are upset with you for the change, or the change hurts, the change is painful, like emotionally, relationally, all of those things, really being able to center yourself and like God is working for your good because you're doing it in him and for him. And I think part of that process for me, asking kind of like what helped in that, is really being able to stay grounded in what I know is true about God, I know is true about myself, and being able to rely on that and not doubt God in that. So even when I'm doubting, like, am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? This is really hard, remembering like why I'm doing it, and the why of that is really God and what he's calling me into. And I think going along with that, it's just like willingness to be in discomfort and to self-evaluate in those moments, and having people that you can do that with, kind of falling back on community of people who know you, people who believe the same thing you do, people who know God and that you trust, so that you can say, hey, I'm like, this feels bad, and they can say, I know. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Sometimes new things feel uncomfortable because they're new, not because they're bad or because they're wrong. And so not being scared of that, but being like having faith to trust in those moments where it does feel comfortable in the fall. Like I want to stay by the fire. I want to stay in my jacket. But that's not where I'm being called to. And that's not actually like honoring God or being obedient by staying in what's comfortable. It's really like going through the birth to get to the baby bunny at the other side. Yeah.
Okay, ladies, thank you for everything that you've shared. And we are going to, I'm going to share just a little bit here, and then we're actually going to take a few moments. This is not a group exercise, so don't buddy up, but I want you to look at the handout that you got and really think about what season am I in. And I think sometimes it's easy to come to a retreat like this and we're like, oh, okay, I'm in some kind of a season, but then you leave and you go home and you kind of forget because you walk in the door and nobody's done the dishes and the dogs haven't been let out and your kids are fighting because somebody took the remote control, and maybe that's just my house. I might not be going home after this, but I want us to have a minute in this session to really reflect and think, what season am I in? What tools do I need? And we'll be available, all three of us, I'm sorry, there's four of us, all four of us will be available right after this. If there's anything we can help you with, or maybe you're like, gosh, I don't know how to fill in the blank, or I've never had someone in my life who has fill in the blank. So let me finish this, and then I am going to give us just a few minutes, probably 3 or 4 minutes, to just take a moment to think about what season you are in. I really want you, because like we talked about earlier, you kind of need to know what season you're in, so you know what resources you need. And these seasons are temporary. I mean, all of us go through each one of them at times, and sometimes you can have like a season of fall at the same time you're having a little bit of a season of summer or a season of spring, but they are temporary. You will ebb and flow in and out of the seasons. Just like our life here is temporary. The ultimate destination is heaven. Heaven it's just going to be amazing. It will be the perfect relationships and the perfect joy in heaven. We are not there yet because we don't have perfect relationships or perfect joy. And we just need to, in all seasons, keep our eyes heavenly focused, not earthly focused. So take a minute. I'm gonna set a timer because that is part of my job, and I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes and just look at the handout and really think to yourself, what season am I in? And then after that, we'll talk a little bit more about the tools that we have to help us through each season. Okay, I hope you've all had a chance to just reflect about where you are. And one of the biggest things that God gives us is community. We were not meant to do life alone. There are so many ways that we can have community, and it's not just showing up at church on Sunday morning. You can meet people there, but you're not going to establish really authentic relationships just by seeing someone every Sunday morning. So if you are one of those ladies that has decided, I'm in a season of summer, then I would challenge you to reach out to someone in your neighborhood, reach out to someone in your church that maybe you've had a couple conversations with, and they mentioned, gosh, I'm really having, kind of a hard time right now. And if you are someone who is in a season of fall, then I would challenge you to be really authentic about that and not just say, I'm fine, because a lot of times we're not fine. That's a big fat lie. And I think being authentically where we are would help someone. I might not know that somebody is struggling if they don't share about it. If you're in a season of winter, especially the hardest season, I would just really encourage you to find a life group. I know Cassie said, I think there's 13 different churches, so I might not see a single one of you in here when you leave, which is so sad. But find a life group in your church. And if your church doesn't have one, or they don't have one that meets your needs, you don't have to, this might be brand new information, you don't actually have to go to a life group at the church you're at. Just in case nobody knew that, you can actually go to any life group that loves Jesus and studies the Word, and they would love to have you. But I know Westside here has a lot of life groups that you can be a part of, and if there's not one, then I would really, really encourage you to find one. And then if you are in a season of winter and you're like, gosh, I feel like I've kind of been in a season of winter for like a year now, then I'm going to really encourage you to reach out to someone who could maybe mentor you or come walk alongside you. You don't need a group of 30 women here. You need like 1 or 2 women who you can ask to pray for you and share what you're going through. I had a season of winter about 3 years ago, and there was a lady in our life group who was just enough older than me that she was just that much wiser. And I was like, can we walk once a week? And we did, and she just poured into me, and it was amazing. But you have to be willing, you have to be brave. And if you're in spring, then I would just encourage you to just be brave and be willing to not hold things so tight that God just has to rip them out of your hands, because that really hurts. And always, always be in the Word. That is the answer to everything. And it sounds like such a pat answer, like study the Bible, just be in the Word. Oh, just be in the Word. But it really is. It's where God gives you commands to love one another. It's where God gives us commands to have community with one another. It's where God shows us how much He loves us. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for listening to our panelists and just taking time out of your schedule to come to Blessed.